Hello. If this video has appeared on your screen, then it's materialized right when you needed it to. I'm Spencer, and this is Real Television. And this is actually a new channel on the channel, if that makes sense. It's channel 6. So this is going to be the channel for spiritual, symbolic artwork. Not necessarily always spiritual. It's all like just artwork that I've done, and I'm just kind of putting on display if people want to see it. Um, so I have a couple of pieces, but this is the first piece that I wanted to talk about. And I had to put like a watermark and stuff on it just because, people will try to steal it probably. But just to kind of protect my own work, I had to put something on it. But if you want a print of it, or if you want to see about getting a print for it, you can check out the Patreon. I'm going to put it on there soon. Probably just in the shop as a digital download. So if you guys want to buy that, that's totally fine. I haven't really decided on what the price is going to be or anything, but I'll put it on there for sure. Once I get people on there and they want to, buy my work, I can totally, see people wanting to do that, so to speak. But yeah, this channel is going to be a little bit different than channel 1, which is the, spiritual download breakdown videos that I've been doing so far. But yeah, let me go ahead and put on here the image, and I call this one False Leadership. And there's a few things that I really liked that I did with it. I'm going to sit off to the side so you can kind of have a balanced image here. But the image was just something I did for fun back in the day, but looking back at it now, I can see symbolism in it. Like, for example, when leadership is corrupted, it goes from light to dark. So the background with it being going from white to black, or like a dark gray at least, it's just going from like a pure approach of leadership to a muddied version. And that kind of actually speaks to what's happening today, in my opinion, that no matter what aspect of life it is, whether that's a job, politics, even just your own life, it can feel like there's outside forces or like powers beyond your control that is somehow corrupting something in your life. I don't know how to explain that. Hopefully that comes across correctly. And feel free to put your own meaning to this work as well, because I know that my interpretation isn't the end all be all. There might be a lesson in this painting that somebody needs to know about. But before we get into like the actual meanings of things, I did want to talk about some self-critiques I wanted to talk about. One of them being some of the things that I wish I could have done better would be like the horns themselves, because it's supposed to be an elk. So the horns aren't exactly super accurate. But then again, I wasn't trying to be accurate. I was trying to do like chunky, blocky shapes, kind of like a cartoon character, but if it had form, if that makes sense, because you can kind of see it in like the brow area. You can see that it's very shaped. It's shaped very specifically with the values and stuff that are around it. And not only that, but you can see it in the tongue as well, like the light and how it touches it. It kind of gives it that form and shape there. I'm really proud of that, especially with the smoke, because I had zero idea how to paint smoke, and I'm like, why did I choose something that had to have smoke in this? Because I have zero clue. But I just ended up taking white acrylic paint and just watering it down. Although I should have used like paint thinner, but I was doing it off of like zero experience. But now that I know, I'll take that into account for next time. But I want to see if I could do this any differently as well. Maybe try repainting it in the future. But basically, a lot of it I was really proud of, and I still am. But honestly, I kind of wish I could have went a little more realistic in the sense of like the shape of things, like the horns, the ears, stuff like that. Kind of like taxidermy level, if that makes sense. Maybe not that realistic, but at least closer to it, but also making it kind of that weird uncanny valley feeling. But I think it turned out pretty well considering, you know, that I wasn't super experienced with painting. Like I am, but I'm not. You know, it's literally just a hobby for me. But yeah, moving on to like the symbolic aspect of it. I chose red and an elk because to me elks represent that quiet power, if that makes sense. That a lot of, you know, animals that are hoofed, I forget what the actual name is for it, those, you know, hoofed animals, but they all seem to have that regal status, if that makes sense. And a lot of people associate status with leadership. So that's partially why I chose an elk in the first place. But for me personally, it represents leadership. So I chose aspects of like a demon as well because red is that passion, that drive, that anger, because it has both sides of it, right? You know, red can also mean anger or rage, or it could also mean blood. It can also mean passion, love. It just depends on your perspective, like I've said in the channel one a lot of the time. So in this context, I've used red to show the volatile nature of power and leadership, and if used incorrectly, the harm that it can do, especially with black, because normally black can symbolize like power and directing power, just because of the fact that it uses all colors to make black, whereas white is the absence of all color. So in this context, black is corruption because of, you know, the power that it used to be corrupted. I don't know how to explain that. Hopefully that comes across the way that I wanted it to, but the fire on the inside is also sort of that inner fire used incorrectly, if that makes sense. Because if you go back to my channel one, I talk about inner fire and personal power and how that's important to awakening and realizing your dreams and stuff like that. But if you're using it in a negative and corruptive way, it can end up burning you more than anybody else, which is why it's coming out through the mouth and the nose and the eyes, because the corruption has made it to the point where they can't see the damage that they're doing, and all they are seeing is the power that they have over everyone else, if that makes sense. And the snake tongue specifically I put in there because one, it's cool, and two, it means that, you know, leaders that are not true leaders will say anything to keep their power, you know, and that's super important. And I like how it's half in shadow and half in light, because you can never truly tell if they're telling the truth, you know? And because like you can see it like right, you know, I can't point to it. I keep forgetting, but if you can see where the smoke comes out and you can see the light and where it stops on the tongue, you can see that symbolism there in that aspect. But I also made the mouth wider because of the symbolism of power always needing more, and how with elk you can only open it so far, right? But they're always pushing that envelope of how much power can I get, how much can I suppress people for, you know, more power, more control, that kind of thing. And the fact that it's split all the way back to the ear is very symbolic in itself as well, because at that point, if they get to the point where that smile, that power grab is that far, they don't care what you have to say. They don't care. They just want their power and their control, and in order to keep it that way, if that makes sense. And like the spikes on the back are especially important because that's just the physical representation of pushing someone away and not allowing people to get too close, if that makes sense. It's their own wounding, if that makes sense. It's symbolic of how when you use your power incorrectly, it can get other people hurt. And that includes yourself. So it just reminds me of the character Gul'dan from World of Warcraft and how he uses the Fel to take life from others. That's exactly kind of what I was pulling from as the inspiration for the spikes on the back. So if you know anything about World of Warcraft lore, that's going to help you even more probably figure out what this is supposed to mean. But I have a couple of anecdotal stories that could be used to show how I've seen this type of leadership on my personal level, both as someone who had a leadership position at one point in my life and also working under other people, which I hate that term because being a leader just means that you have more keys on your key ring. It doesn't mean that you are above someone just because you have access to things that other people don't. But with that being said, one example is when I worked for one of the largest, retail places known, and I'm not going to name anything because I don't want to get sued, for one. And this is purely just, something that I channeled through the painting inexplicably. But during my time working for this retail company, I became a team lead, which was awesome. I really enjoyed it despite all the pressure. And I really enjoyed working with the people that I worked with in my department. And honestly, I don't regret to this day leaving that job. I just left one day because I could not stand it anymore, because I had leadership that kept saying, delegate, delegate, delegate. And I'm like, first of all, I can't delegate if there's only 2 people, not including myself. And the 2 employees that I did have kept getting bombarded by customers because it was one of the busiest locations in the state. And yeah, it was just a lot. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, so you want all this stuff to get done, but you don't want me to help. That doesn't make sense to me. So I would do what I can to help every time, because normally there would only be 2 people, maybe 3 people that were there, not including myself. But even that was not enough with how much traffic that store was getting. Not only that, but they expected us to be able to catch people stealing. And I'm like, how are we going to do that when you have us doing 50 million things? Which in itself probably would have fixed things had they hired like maybe a couple other people for each shift. Not only that, but they kept hiring, part-time student people, which is fine because, students need jobs too. But at the same time, it's nice to have older employees as well that would be able to see like, oh, we should have this over here, or like, collaborate with me and tell me, hey, this needs to be done too. And I would be that person to go tell someone like, hey, this is what my employees are telling me. What do you think we should do? Because I think we should do this, and this, that kind of thing. Like collaborating as a leader. It doesn't mean that you have power over people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm just really passionate about this. This is only like one artwork that I wanted to do because I wanted to do all colors of the rainbow. Like, this is just one, and this utilizes the color red for it. And then the other one I'm going to be talking about is like green, and then I wanted to do like symbolizing corruption in different aspects of life with different colors, using animals as the conduit catalyst, if that makes sense. But the other story I wanted to share as far as leadership is one where I was not a manager. I was not a lead of any sort. I was working for a fast food joint. I'm not going to name anything about because, again, I don't want to get in trouble. But basically, the general manager of that location was giving raises to people who he liked and not the people who were actually doing work. So, for example, like I was bussing tables, mopping the floor, doing cashier, running the drive-through, all of that. And even, helping with the sauces and sometimes even in the kitchen. I was doing all the things, and yet I would only get maybe like a 10 or 15, 20-cent raise every 6 months. And yet the people who he liked were getting raises at the max level for doing the bare minimum. So it kind of was really frustrating being at that job. I'm not going to lie, but I stuck it out because I was in college at the time getting my digital illustration degree. Which I'm so sad that I wasn't able to utilize that at like a career level and in the normal sense. But at the same time, I'm not, like I said in my other videos, I'm not meant to take the normal route in my life. So it's not surprising at this point. But yeah, like leadership should not be biased or accusatory in nature. It should help those who are on your team because you are a team lead. That's the title. The manager, you're managing people. So you need to have that humanity aspect in every aspect of leadership, I would say. And that doesn't mean that you can't form bonds with your employees, like you can't become friends or anything, just as long as you still have that separation of like, oh, you're doing something you shouldn't be doing because blah, 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 at least then you can reach them on a personal level and be like, hey, so-and-so, you're not supposed to be doing that. I don't want to get you written up and you need to stop, that kind of thing, because I still want to keep you as a friend. Like, I know how messy that can get, but at the same time, that can help, and I don't know. I just feel like leadership on all levels has been corrupted to the point that leadership has become a status rather than a role, and more selfish than service oriented, if that makes sense. And we can see that with politics. We can see that with the healthcare industry. We can see that with insurance. I can name everything basically, and somebody will have a story to say about some sort of leadership going wrong. And I feel like there should be more seminars for leadership roles or more team building things that require getting to know someone on a personal level, and understanding the nuances of being a leader and what that entails. Because it's not just having more keys on your key ring. Like I said, it's taking care of those who are trusting you to help them when they need you most. But yeah, I wanted to add those in, so hopefully that makes sense. Basically, that's what I've gathered from doing this and I wanted to share it. Just because I really think it's cool, and this channel is just basically showing, you know, the multiplicity, the multi aspect of me. So it's basically for people who want to get to know me on a deeper level. There's going to be other channels as well, and I'll make a different video explaining what channel is for what and the future plans and everything that I want to do for it. But yeah, these are going to be more off the cuff, instead of pre-planned and rewritten and everything like channel 1 is, just because the downloads, when I get those for the movies that I watch, there's so much information, it would literally be impossible for me to get all of the points across without writing it down first, into something coherent that people can understand. But yeah, with that being said, hopefully you guys like this. I'm going to make another one with a different piece here soon, if not right after this. Probably going to upload quite a few videos this week. But yeah, if you guys like it, feel free to see it. Grab it on Patreon once it's up, of course. I do plan to sell more art, and I do plan to do more art related videos, not necessarily in this capacity always. I do want to do like videos where I actually record myself painting something and do like a speed paint and talk over it, if that makes sense. That way it's a little funner to watch. But yeah, I hope you guys like it, and keep your minds and your hearts open. Peace.